Good morning, St. Andrews. It is good to be with you all this morning in this new Advent season. I am excited about what we have planned over the next few weeks. I love the season of Advent, and I love everything that goes with it, the meals and the decorations, the rituals and the family. And I even love the gathering that unofficially starts it in our house, which is Thanksgiving. We always start by having some kind of meal with family around Thanksgiving. And I don't know about you, but those are filled with interesting and difficult conversations. When we get together with family that we haven't seen for a while, maybe who are coming from different places or who believe different things, we start out with things we can all agree on and then work our way outwards from there. So we start out by talking about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. And we can all agree that it's great publicity, but a dangerous relationship for both of them. We start out by talking about Hallmark movies and the ones that we love and the ones that we love less. And I think they're great, but honestly, they need to come with a warning, because I don't know how many of you who have ever gone back from the city to your small town over a holiday and met a guy who was wearing a flannel shirt and had a dog and was working at a tree farm and considered leaving your job in the city. But some of the fun conversations often turn to difficult conversations, where we start talking about the difficulty we see in the world around us, when we start talking about the war in Israel and Palestine. We start talking about political corruption. We start talking about all of the difficult things that are going on in our world, and the conversations turn difficult. And one of the most common questions I get asked in my role as a pastor generally, one of the questions I am asked all the time is, how? How can we hold all this pain and difficulty? How can we stay engaged with what is going on in the world without just being completely overwhelmed by it? How do we keep from being overwhelmed by the enormity of the world's grief? How do we keep hope alive? And there's an interesting passage in Mark chapter 13. That's where we're going to be starting today. Mark chapter 13, starting with verse 24. There is a section in each of the Gospels where Jesus is talking to his disciples as he knows that he's about to die and is giving them sort of last instructions. These are the few things that I need you to know before I go. And this is what Jesus tells his disciples in Mark chapter 13. This isn't going to seem very Christmassy, but stay with me. In those days, after the suffering of that time, the sun will become dark and the moon won't give its light. The stars will fall from the sky and the planets and other heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then they will see the human one coming in the clouds with great power and splendor. Then he will send the angels and gather together his chosen people from the four corners of the earth, from the end of the earth to the end of heaven. Learn this parable from the fig tree. After its branch becomes tender and it sprouts new leaves, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see these things happening, you know that he's near at the door. I assure you that this generation will not pass away until these things happen. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will certainly not pass away. But nobody knows when that day or hour will come, not the angels in heaven and not the Son, only the Father knows. So watch out. Stay alert. You don't know when the time is coming. It is as if someone took a trip, left the household behind, and put the servants in charge, giving each one a job to do, and told the doorkeeper to stay alert. Therefore, stay alert. You don't know when the head of the household will come, whether in the evening or at midnight, or when the rooster crows in the early morning or at daybreak. Don't let him show up when you weren't expecting and find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to all, stay alert. May God bless the reading and hearing of just a portion of God's word. I'm going to go ahead and spoil the end of the sermon for you. How do we keep hope alive? We stay awake. We keep alert. Now, I know what you're thinking about this passage. I do. And the answer is no. Is this passage, in fact, about Christmas? No, it's not. What in the world are we supposed to do with this? This doesn't seem very Christmassy, right? We're talking about the birth of the baby Jesus, and instead we get stars falling from the sky and planets being thrown out of orbit. We get the end of the world. I thought you told me you weren't that kind of Baptist. So we're going to start with the obvious. When some folks read passages like this, they try to make it about something that is going to happen in the future, and respectfully, it isn't. Jesus very specifically says here, this generation will not pass away until everything that I'm talking about is going to happen. And he said it almost 2,000 years ago. And second, Jesus said that at the end of all things, no one would know when that was going to be. Not the angels in heaven, not the Son, only the Father would know. Only God knows when that is going to be. And so for all of us who have been setting dates, who have been looking at when we think things are going to end, everyone who is guessing, telling everyone that the end is nigh, everyone who has tried to do that up to this point has been wrong. So we shouldn't do that. Jesus told us not to. We shouldn't do it. In fact, I think the beginning is nigh. Because this is, believe it or not, a traditional Advent text. This passage has been read at this season of the year, at this time of the year for centuries. Precisely because this is about what happens when Jesus shows up. That's in fact what Advent means, is showing up. Advent is the time every year when we remember that we are waiting for God to show up. Because God is, in some sense, not here completely, not fully. And this may be difficult for some of us to hear, but God is not in control. God's will is not being done on earth as it is in heaven. God's kingdom is in our midst, but it is not pervasive. It's not ubiquitous. It's not everywhere and always. Just look at the world around us. Look at what is pervasive and ubiquitous. Look at what is everywhere and always. We see war and hunger. We see abuse and corruption. We see people killing and starving and exploiting other vulnerable human beings. And it can be overwhelming to us to have to pay attention to that. We have more access to this kind of information than we have at any point in human history, and therefore we feel more responsible for what is going on than we have at any time in human history. Our brains and bodies were not designed to be able to hold all of this, which is why sometimes I'm slow to answer your emails, because I'm processing a nonstop 24/7 onslaught of information with a brain designed to eat berries in a cave. I apologize for that. It feels like things are bad and getting worse, even if it's not true. Even though statistically speaking, this is the safest time in human history to be a human being. It's not more true now that things are broken. We are just more aware of all the brokenness that exists. We are surrounded by it. We are inundated by it. We are drowning in just the sheer amount of information that we have around us. We cannot go through a single day without hearing about or even seeing pictures or video of another human tragedy, another reminder that the kingdom of God may be in our midst, but it is not finished yet. How are we supposed to hold all of that? How can we remain compassionately aware of what is going on in the world around us without being either overwhelmed by it or becoming callous to it? And we do that, Jesus says here, by staying awake, by keeping alert to where God is showing up in the middle of all this brokenness. And God tends to show up in small and simple ways most often. I mean, look at the season that we are celebrating right now and how God showed up in that season. People were expecting a king and they got an infant. People were expecting a military campaign and they got a teenage mom. People were expecting a show of force and they got a silent night. When God showed up as a baby. Plot twist. This staying alert to where God is showing up is what William Stringfellow called discerning signs. Discerning signs, William Stringfellow said, has to do with comprehending the remarkable in common happenings, to see portents of death where others find progress or success, but simultaneously to behold tokens of the reality of the resurrection or hope where others are consigned to confusion or despair. This discerning where God is at work, this looking for tokens of the advent, tokens of the resurrection is not easy. If we are not paying close attention, we will miss the places that God is showing up most powerfully. Because we know that every good and perfect gift is from above, but we're not just talking about serendipity. We're not just talking about small and simple pleasures. We are talking about eruptions of the holy in the midst of brokenness. We are talking about fissures of hope in the middle of despair. We are talking about outbreaks of new life in a culture that celebrates and honors death. We're talking about an unexpected conversation in the rotunda where a simple, "Hey, how are you doing?" turns into a sharing and holding of someone's pain. We're talking about a casual or offhand word giving a woman the courage that she needs to leave an abusive relationship. We're talking about a community of faith gathering to support one another through substance abuse and addiction. These are what God breaking out in our midst looks like. Now, by definition, these moments don't often last long. We try to institutionalize these. We try to domesticate them. We try to manufacture these moments, and they just slip through our fingers. But this is how God works, is in the small and in the simple, in the hidden and in the underground, in silence and in darkness. Look at the metaphors that Jesus uses to talk about what it looks like when the kingdom of heaven has come. It looks like yeast working its way through dough. It looks like a seed coming to life underground. Our job, our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to stay awake, to keep alert, and to be looking for these tiny advents, these tokens of the presence of God and of resurrection. What did Jesus say here? He said, "What I say to you, I say to all. Stay alert, keep awake." And it is tough for us to do. Martin Luther famously said that when somebody falls off of one side of the horse and tries to get back on, they don't often sit up straight. They often fall off of the other side of the horse. And so we end up falling off of one or other side of this horse. Either we are awake and aware of what is going on in the world around us, and we are overwhelmed and crushed by it, or we've developed calluses. And we are separated from the pain in the world because we feel like there's nothing we can do about it. So some of us are already staying alert, and to you, I say it is necessary sometimes to protect your energy, to take a break, to reconnect deliberately with God. You cannot do the work that needs to be done if you are burned out, if you are flamed out. The world's trouble will still be here when you get back. But some of us have disengaged. Some of us feel like the suffering or the problems in the world are not ours because they do not directly affect us. Am I my brother's keeper? And so we need to heed the words of Jesus. We need to listen to what Jesus said when he said, stay alert, keep awake. It means we need to be paying attention. Yes, to the pain of those around us, but also to what God is doing in us, to what God is doing through us, to what God is doing in our midst. To be looking for those tiny advents, those tokens of the resurrection and of hope. To be looking for where God is breaking in. And so I invite you in the busyness of this season to stay alert, to keep awake, and to be looking for where God shows up. So we have prepared a bunch of tools and opportunities, just like Katie was talking about, to be able to help stay awake, keep alert to what God is doing. We're going to be having an online Bible study that Chris Smith, our online campus director, is going to be leading. That'll start at 6 o'clock tonight. We have an Advent devotional. There is a page on sa.church that says Advent and Christmas. If you click on that, then you can go and see where the Advent devotional is. And Debbie has set that up in an amazing way so that you can see what day it is, what day you need to be reading, and to follow along. This is something that is present on your phone so you can keep it with you always and be paying attention to what God is doing around you. And we have special services set up. The next few weeks are going to be powerful. They're going to be fun, they're going to be moving, but they are all going to be built around the idea or the theme of what it means to stay awake to what God is doing. Next week, our choir is going to be singing. We're going to have communion. The week after that, we're going to have a pajama party. I am, again, going to be preaching in my pajamas. You don't have to wear your pajamas, but I am from the pulpit. So if you're interested, that's December 10th. December 17th, we're going to be having our Blue Christmas service, where we are going to be reflecting on what it means to suffer grief and loss during especially these holy times. And we're going to be holding space for those who have lost someone, but also for those who have not. If you don't feel like you are in a grieving season, if this is not an issue that you are dealing with right now, we still want you to be here because you can help be the support for others that they need during this difficult time. And then, of course, on Christmas Eve, we're going to have our candlelight services at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. We'd love to see you here for all of these. We find these little advents, these tokens of the resurrection and of hope in all kinds of places. We had a difficult Bible study a few weeks ago when we were going through our mental and emotional health sermon series. There was a group that agreed to do a study called Blessed Are the Crazy, and it was dealing with significant mental illness and the brokenness that can create within families. And I was asked to come to the last session to explain myself for asking them to participate in this, and also just to share in some of what they had learned and some of how they had grown. And I shared some of my own personal and family story, some of my own personal journey with mental and emotional illness and wellness, and some of my extended families. And I tried to do this in a way that was lighthearted, in a way that would help to normalize these difficult things. But as I walked away, I was afraid that I had, instead of normalizing it, I had minimized it. I had made it seem less difficult. I was afraid I had made it seem like I was making light of their pain. And so there was one person particularly that I thought I ought to talk to, and I might even need to apologize to. So next Sunday, I saw this person on Sunday morning, and they actually thanked me for being open and honest about my story. I had been so worried about the way that I had shared it. I had been so worried about the things that I had said, and God was able to use even that. We had been able, in the sacred space of the coffee stand, to find beauty and meaning and truth, not without pain, but even in the midst of pain and fear and uncertainty. And it reminded me of a poem by the professor and author Kate Bowler, "A Blessing for When Things Don't Make Any Sense." God, I am fumbling around for answers, reasons, meaning. I can't find any purpose in this pain. Why me? Why them? Why now? I don't know when this is going to get better, or if I will ever find relief. Blessed are we who need to be reminded that there are some things we cannot fix and some things we can. Blessed are we who say, my life isn't always getting better. Right in the midst of the pain and fear and uncertainty, may we hunt for beauty and meaning and truth together. Not to erase the pain or solve the pain, though surely that would be nice, but to remind us that beauty and sorrow coexist. And that doesn't mean we're broken or have been forgotten. In our hope, in our disappointment, in our joy, in our pain, God is here, and we are never, were never, and will be never alone. Would you all pray with me? Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer God, we thank you for this season. We thank you for this season of waiting, and we thank you for the ways that you do show up, even if it is not what we expected, even if it is not what we wanted. God, please help us to stay awake, to keep alert to what you are doing in us and through us and in our midst. And God, we thank you most of all for Jesus, who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.